What's up, Wall fans, Common Sensors podcast consumers? Welcome to the video feed for episode 103 of Common Sense Sundays with Go Tell It to the Wall, hosted by me, of course, your absolute favorite podcast host, the one and only Sean O'Rourke. We are back after a brief Easter break. Not everyone gets an Easter break, but when you have kids and family and stuff, you take a little Sunday off there. So we got a lot to get into, and it is a very warm Sunday here in Southern California, so I would rather not be sitting in my studio. It's not quite warm enough to really kick the air on, although we had to kick it on the other night, really just to kind of cool off the house a little bit. So all that being said, before I get too overheated in this studio, let's get right into episode 103.
Who want to go tell it to the wall? Tell it to the wall. Go tell it to the wall. Tell it to the wall.
All right, Wall fans, Common Sensors podcast consumers, welcome to another very exciting edition of Common Sense Sundays with Go Tell It to the Wall, hosted by me, your absolute favorite podcast host, the one and only Sean O'Rourke. And we've got an action-packed episode for you today. I don't know what makes it extra action-packed, but we're going to use that descriptor on this fine Sunday in April. And before we get into that action-packedness, is that even a word? Packedness? Maybe it's another Go Tell It to the Wall word. We'll have to look that one up at a later date. But before we get into that, we always kick things off with our social plugs. And this is episode 103. Did I say that? I've even got it on the board right here, and I think I might have forgotten to say it. But it is episode 103 of Common Sense Sundays. Anyway, social plugs. You can keep up with us during episodes, before episodes, after episodes, whenever you so please, and you can do that in multiple locations. One of those would be facebook.com/GoTellItToTheWall. That's right, facebook.com/GoTellItToTheWall. That's our official Facebook page. If you're a Facebook user, make sure you follow us. Give us a like on there. Going to keep you updated on everything that is Common Sense Sundays and Go Tell It to the Wall. Of course, we have our YouTube channel. YouTube.com/GoTellItToTheWall. That's right, YouTube.com/GoTellItToTheWall. You just got to remember the /GoTellItToTheWalls for most of our things here. And if you prefer to use YouTube, you can check out all of our videos on there. Please give us a subscribe, and you're going to get the content, all the video content for all of our episodes, but like I usually say, all kinds of other playlists up there, so make sure you are checking out the YouTube channel if you're a YouTube user. If you don't use YouTube, it doesn't do you any good. Or maybe check out YouTube. I don't know. I guess I could say check out YouTube. There's certain things you can't tell people to check out, like Twitter. We don't even promote the Twitter account anymore for obvious reasons. Anyway, and also, for those of you that use Instagram, you can follow my own personal Instagram account, which is at SoCalSean, SoCalSean, at SoCalSean. Not everything on there is Go Tell It to the Wall related, but there's good content up there, especially if you follow along with many of the show recaps and album reviews we do. You're going to get a lot of that great content over there on Instagram, so make sure you follow my own personal Instagram account. And of course, all-encompassing of those things that I just mentioned, would be SeanO'RourkeLive.com. That's right, SeanO'RourkeLive.com. That's going to actually give you links to all those things I just mentioned. So if you only remember one thing, remember that. And really, if you Google Sean O'Rourke, Go Tell It to the Wall, all that stuff comes up anyway. But we like to give the URLs. But of course, Sean O'Rourke Live, you're going to find links to all that stuff, as well as exclusive content that doesn't get posted anywhere else, as well as a link to our Patreon campaign. If you want to help us out financially, that is a great way to do it. For those of you not familiar with Patreon, even if you don't want to support us, it's something you should be checking out. It's a great tool for artists and broadcasters and musicians and all kinds of other stuff. And if you do want to support us but don't want to get involved with Patreon, you can support us by picking up some Go Tell It to the Wall merch. Our merch website links directly from SeanO'RourkeLive.com. You'll see a nice little merch tab right there at the top, and that's going to take you to our merch website, so you can pick up some Common Sense t-shirts and all kinds of cool stuff on there. So check that out as well. All right, I mentioned at the top of the video feed, but not the top of the regular feed, we took a Sunday off last weekend. It was Easter. And pre-children, I was not really a take the day Easter type person. But when you have a child or children at home, what happens is that ends up encompassing your entire day. So because of that, I chose to just kind of focus on everything else. Had parents in town, had all kinds of family at the house. That's what we usually do for Easter and those certain holidays. So that we're back after a brief Easter break. Unfortunately, my child is back in school because leading up to Easter here in Los Angeles is spring break, so it's a little bit hectic around my house just because it's, summertime's one thing. I probably should have just put this in parenting, but when it's that like 5-6 days, you're not quite adjusted either way. It's just enough to mess things up so that going back to school after Easter is quite a challenge, but you're not really in a routine the way you are in summer, so it's always a bit of a challenge. Well worth it. I mean, the kids need time off, and we kept my kid busy during that spring break week there. All right, so like I said, we're back with episode 103 after that brief, just 1 week little break there. I know we've had some breaks in here all over the place, and we're going to have some more in May, so just prepare yourselves for that. I don't intend on broadcasting from Las Vegas Memorial Day weekend, so just a little heads up, and we'll have many episodes before that actually happens, but just mark your calendars that there will not be an episode Memorial Day weekend. All right, now that that's out of the way, let's get into some digital trends, things trending around the social platforms over the past week or so, and things that I find either interesting or infuriating, depending on my mood on a given day and on a given episode day. So let's get into some of that here. Twitter. I feel like we're going to be talking about Twitter every week until it just dies that slow death that it is creeping toward. But I want to specifically talk about the algorithm because, anybody that, even if you're not using Twitter, you've probably heard that they've been messing with the algorithm. We all complain about algorithms, Facebook and Instagram, whatever, it's all algorithm based. But Twitter has really gotten out of hand, especially for stuff that it's feeding me. And I can tell you, as much as even before Elon Musk bought it, I was like, this is just kind of a hellscape. And I am not a content pusher on Twitter. I like to browse it. I'm not interacting really on Twitter. But even when it was annoying and people were arguing, it was still pretty accurate to things that I followed or I would look up, whatever it might be. And now the algorithm has just gotten to the point that it's pushing me junk that has nothing to do with anything that I talk about, that I read, that I search, anything. Just and not even that it doesn't have to do with it, but it's completely contradictory to a lot of the things that I do follow and read and look up and all those other things. And I'm essentially just getting junk daily on this new For You tab. And it's like, what part of the algorithm, and we can all sit here and discuss algorithms and, are they accurate? What part of the algorithm makes Twitter think that I want like super conservative posts? I get posts from people like, and we know they're out there because I talk about it, bashing the LGBTQ community. And it's like, why is this popping up in my feed? Clearly, this is not geared toward me. I understand that there are hateful people out there and there is an audience for it, but why is it in my feed? And that's really what's going on quite a bit. And moving on to our next topic as far as digital trends, and the slow burning down of Twitter and that whole social site. Some news came out from Twitter specifically pertaining to NPR, National Public Radio, which is a radio station all across the U.S. and different terrestrial stations, and they also push news. They have a website, and so they have these labels on Twitter, as you know. And we talked about the whole Twitter Blue thing, I think, a couple weeks ago. They actually got labeled as state-affiliated media. And this is something that's usually reserved for, and nobody quote me on the, apologies for not having the names. If you really want to look it up, there is a Russian state-affiliated media that's pushing certain narratives, and is funded by the government. I believe there is also one in China. That's why these labels exist. So I get it to an extent. However, this in no way pertains to NPR here in the United States. And it's clearly just an attempt by Elon Musk to stir the pot. And in fact, you had people cheering because of what happened next. NPR said, this is an inaccurate label for us, so we are simply going to leave Twitter. And that doesn't mean, and this is what I've said it for years, but especially since the Elon Musk takeover, there's still other stuff out there. You don't have to solely rely on Twitter for your news. So you're still going to be able to go to the NPR website. I'm sure they're still going to post things like Facebook. I believe they said they'll still post to Instagram and all kinds of other stuff here. But because of unjustly getting that label, they've decided to leave Twitter. And I'm sure we're going to see more and more of this as incorrect labels come out, as they push improper, not even improper, just inaccurate stuff through their algorithm. You're going to see more and more people leaving Twitter. So good on you, NPR, for making a stance. But then, of course, when they left, people were like, oh, great, and they're applauding. And it's like, what? Why? And we can argue, whatever those conservative networks are. I can't even remember the damn names of them anymore. I see clips pop up now and then because it's usually some conservative politician making an ass of themselves. But I don't get offended by the fact that they simply are able to tweet. Now, if we're talking about accounts inciting violence, it's a whole different. We're not talking. NPR is not doing those kinds of things. So it amazes me that people are cheering. You don't have to follow NPR. It's as simple as that. Just because they're there doesn't mean you have to follow them. But here we are, the slow death of Twitter. And in fact, because of that, I've noticed a lot of people using, switching, I don't even know if it's switching over. They're probably keeping Twitter, but utilizing a newer social app that is similar to Twitter, and it's called Mastodon. So I haven't actually started using this yet. And maybe in a couple months, if we see a viability to it, we'll start utilizing it for Go Tell It to the Wall. But what I did the other day was I went to actually download it from the Google App Store. And one thing that caught my eye immediately is I searched Mastodon, and Mastodon was not, in fact, the first thing that came up. It was the second thing listed in my search results there on the Google App Store. You know what the first one was? It was actually Truth Social. So the Google App Store wanted to push Truth Social my way, which again clearly is not a place that I would want to be. Google should know this well because they just have control of everything that I do and I own. I've got Google phones and tablets and Google Homes and all this. Google's just constantly hearing everything I have to say. I utilize Gmail. It's just everything is Google, but still, Truth Social is popping up there. So it's not just Twitter pushing inaccurate stuff. I found it really, and it wasn't even like I was upset. I just went, what? That's really strange. And who knows if Truth Social's paying a little extra money for this. I didn't care enough to investigate, but I did find it quite interesting that because I searched for this Mastodon social platform, which again I haven't used yet, it said, "Whoa, if you search for Mastodon, you should download Truth Social to your device." Like, hell no, I'm not downloading Truth Social to my device. I know a lot of people like to go on there and troll conservatives and everything. That's not for me. I don't have any reason to be on Truth Social. And the really ridiculous stuff they call it truthed. I know this because I see screenshots on other platforms. Stuff that gets posted on Truth Social when it's really out there and wild, especially coming from the Orange Menace. That stuff gets posted on other platforms anyway. People screenshot it. You don't actually need to go on. I have no interest in trolling other people. So I have no interest in seeing any of it unless it's so off the wall that it needs to be seen. And then if that's the case, then there's an article about it, or it's like screenshots are posted to other social platforms. So there's just really no reason for me to be utilizing Truth Social. But apparently Google thinks I should. All right, another thing that's been trending over the past week, probably since, not even over the past week. This might have just happened Friday. I'm not sure when the album released, but Metallica came out with a new album. Not a Metallica fan myself. Yeah, I enjoy the Black Album and Ride the Light. I don't hate them. They're fine, but I'm not a huge Metallica fan. But what they did was, for their album cover, they created a app or plugin that you can click and it'll basically, you can put your own name in and it'll change it to like them. And even if you don't listen to Metallica, you've probably seen their font. It's the big M and the big A at the end. It's kind of funky in the middle there. I'm holding my hands up as if I'm going to draw it or something. I am not. If you're really interested and you don't know what it is, just look up Metallica. You see the logo. And what they did was, you can, like I said, you can put your own name in. And so it generates an album cover with like your name. And it's not even people's names per se. I've seen other bands were using it just kind of as a fun thing. And it looks like a fun thing. Part of me was like, well, should we make a Go Tell It to the Wall one? I was like, nah, I don't need, as much as I say Google has all of my information, a lot of times I'm like, I don't want to give my information to another random, website or app or whatever it might be. But you've probably seen these flooding your social media feeds. Found it pretty interesting. And probably a really good idea on their part because, like I said, I don't follow Metallica. But I was seeing these pop up, and I was like, oh, they released a new album. That's interesting. I didn't go to listen to it. It's just not of interest to me, but clearly got some buzz going beyond just your typical Metallica fans who knew it was coming out and all this other stuff. I feel like I did hear it was coming out, but I'm not really a fan. So everyone's doing it. Jump on that if you really want to. One thing I found fascinating about Metallica, and this is kind of getting a little tangented from the social trends right now, the digital trends. They were on a late night talk show recently. I want to in the past like 2 weeks. I don't know if it was Kimmel or if it was one of the late night talk shows. They have musical guests. And I didn't watch the video, but interestingly enough, and they were promoting their new album. And if you're familiar with bands, when they go on to these late night talk shows or on to Saturday Night Live and stuff, if they're promoting a new album, they tend to play a new song. And I don't know if Metallica also played a new song off their album, but the main song that I saw that was introduced was Master of Puppets. Or whatever, right? Master of Puppets? The Stranger Things song, And I just said, man, Metallica's got to just be so happy that they let Stranger Things utilize that song. And I know there was a lot of backlash from, hardcore Metallica fans saying, oh, you're fake fans because you heard it on Stranger Things. Whatever. If you want to get into Metallica because of that, by all means, do that. But I did think it was a little weird that they didn't play a new song off their album. So they're definitely riding that high that is the Stranger Things fan base, because Master of Puppets, yes, it's from the 80s. it's a close to 40-year-old song here. But that's what they were doing on that late night talk show. So I guess good for them. And I know, like I said, I don't follow him enough, but I know Lars kind of sucks on the drums. Maybe his drums are a little better this time around. Speaking of sucking playing, we're going to get into some of that when we get to entertainment news. So just gird your loins for that. Not Metallica, but another band. All right, and a couple other trends here. These were a couple hashtags that I thought were really funny. Hashtag when I'm on the dance floor. That's right, hashtag when I'm on the dance floor. This was trending over the past week or so. And immediately I thought to myself, what's hashtag when I'm on the dance floor myself? I'm trying not to embarrass myself. And here's the thing. I'm not out there dancing like Carlton from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air or anything, or horribly. I do have, and it's honestly because of my DJ background and hand percussion background. I can hold a rhythm and a beat. There's just nothing special about it, and I have to focus a little harder than probably most people do who have a natural dance ability. But that's usually what I'm trying to do, is not embarrass myself. And I found this hilarious because this was also trending around the same time. Hashtag I'm on the floor, because, not the dance floor, hashtag I'm on the floor. So like the floor, you see if you're watching the video, I got a hardwood floor behind me. Why would you be on the floor? Hashtag I'm on the floor because, and this one was twofold for me. I thought back to my 20s and my youth. And at that time, I would maybe be on the floor because I partied a little too hard. And these days, at my age, I'm usually, if I'm on the floor, it's because my back has been thrown out, and that is the only place I can get any kind of comfort. Yes, for those of you that are young listening to this podcast, it will come after you. And I remember, not the exact date and time or anything, but around the time, and I remember what I was doing. About 7 years ago, I had rented some tables for a party at my house, and they didn't put them where they're supposed to be. So I'm lugging these tables, and I'm not paying attention to what I'm doing. And, prior to this, and trust me, even as a teenager, I had serious injury problems. I had stress fractures and sprained ankles, all kinds of stuff. But, so prior to that, you get a sore back. Maybe you're sitting funky, you're sleeping funky. It kind of starts, depending how active you are, it might start in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, whatever. So I knew what a sore back felt like. But I will never forget this when I go to pick up a table, and I did it wrong. And, you always see on TV shows, my back, I threw my back out, and I was like, oh, yeah, it is a sore back. No. This was an instance, like I said, about 7 years ago, where I went to lift this table, and an immediate pop in my lower back, and then just a tingling, not good tingling sensation through the entirety of my lower back. I keeled over, essentially. Not like fell over and hit my head or anything, but I'm leaned over, and all I could do was then just go lay on the floor. And I'm literally, my wife is at her office. She's at work, and I'm texting her from the floor. I'm going, oh, my God, I can't move right now. She's like, well, just lay on the floor. Don't lift anything else. And I'm like, but I got to move these tables. And yeah, that was when I truly learned the meaning and the feeling of throwing your back out, not just a sore back. It was like a pop and a holy shit. That's what they mean on the sitcoms when you see an older guy who's like, I gotta lay down. So yeah, that's usually why I'm on the floor, is because of a thrown out back. I meant to make some more notes on this, so we're gonna wing it a little bit because I didn't get my full thought process out. What I love about when I'm doing these notes too is I know when I'm gonna do this, and I was making some notes and then I moved on to some other sections and I forgot and I even said to myself, I'm gonna forget to go back and make some more notes on that. So we're gonna fly by the seat of my pants here when it comes to our mental health segment. Now, you know, we talk serious stuff, we talk less serious stuff. This one, I would say, is very serious in some ways, but in a lot of ways kind of down the middle. And I want to talk about how lately, and this has been the case, I'm a kid of the 80s. This has been the case since the 80s. You know, there's no good news on the news. You know, this is why I try to integrate our positive news segment and all kinds of other stuff. And that is especially true these days. No good news, but we have hit a point when it comes to mass shootings that they are just occurring daily in the United States of America, to the point where a lot of people are becoming numb to it. And in fact, there was minimal media coverage on what happened last night, because last night in Alabama, there was a mass shooting. 20 people were injured, 4 people killed. Nobody quote me on those. I know the 20 and the 4. I'm not sure if the 4 was included in that 20. So it might have been as many as 24 people hurt, and 4 of those, or I don't know if that was 4 of the 20, at a 16-year-old's birthday party. 16 years old in Alabama. And I'm not gonna sit here and badmouth Alabama. This is happening everywhere. We're having it. It's happening weekly in Kentucky, and even here in California, where we have strict gun laws. Those things happen. You know, and we have, like I said, we've become so numb to it that we don't notice it at times. But then at the same time, when it does happen, or you start to focus or think about it, is when it creeps up. And that's when that can really get stuck in your mind. And many things can come from that. Even if you don't deal with mental health issues, you don't deal with mental illness, many things can come from that. A lot of times it's anger. And then, of course, there's sadness. And then fear, because this is happening constantly, and it's happening. Obviously, it happens at schools. It happened at the beach recently. A Sweet 16 birthday party, churches, malls, supermarkets. It becomes terrifying, and I can understand why some people hit a point where they're unable to leave their house, and you end up feeling so helpless because of that. And then, to pile on top of that, you have people on the other side of things. So imagine somebody who's dealing with fear, anger, or sadness out of this, and they open a social platform and you see a politician, somebody who's supposed to be serving the people of this country, posing with gigantic guns. I'm not a gun expert. I'm not going to sit here and say, and these terms get thrown around and everything, but you know how we feel here at Go Tell It to the Wall. You want to own a pistol? That's fine. You want to own a shotgun? That's fine. You want a rifle for hunting? Hunting rifle? That's fine. When it comes down to weapons that are used by the military, nobody outside of the military needs those kinds of guns. So you open these social platforms and that's what you see. And the National Rifle Association pushing their agenda, paying off politicians so that the politicians don't enact change. This can wear on you. This can wear on anybody, but especially if you're somebody who has certain mental health issues. Myself, for example, with obsessive compulsive disorder. These things happen, and I admit to becoming numb to it at times myself because it happens so often. Now, I was aware of it because I woke up this morning and my alerts are set to those things. So I did see that it happened. But when it creeps up, someone like me, and whether you're dealing with another kind of mental illness, it might encapsulate your entire thinking. Even though it's not directly affecting you, it's that fear, it's that helplessness, it's that anger, it's wanting to make a change. And that's where the helplessness comes in. So when it comes to mental health, I'm not an expert. I am guilty of doing those things and just becoming numb to it, or just becoming so angry that I come in here and I yell at a wall. But you have to find that balance, because you can't become numb to it, and you can't let it completely encompass your life and send you into a depressive state, an obsessive state, an over-anxious state, a fearful state. I mean, I was always had a certain fear of these things, but then that escalates so much when you have children. When you have people you care, when you're only caring about yourself, it's one thing. But when you have people that you care for and you're responsible for, it becomes even more difficult to deal with these kinds of situations when they pop up in the news. So find that balance. And I know this is so stereotypical, and and I always say, if you want to pray, pray. I'm not someone who prays myself. I prefer a more meditative state, and my meditative state sometimes involves anger. That's just me. But if you're someone who prays, this is a good thing for you. But even if you're not, there's a certain prayer, and it's actually, and the funny thing is, I didn't know this until I was out of high school. I had a teacher, so I went to Catholic high school. I had a teacher who, my freshman year, who at the beginning of every class, he said, and it was so funny, it was so casual, and it was a very quick prayer. I later then learned, I believe it is like the AA prayer that they say, fortunately and unfortunately, because I think it works for some people, but then certain people get trapped in it, and you're trading one addiction for another, while another addiction is less harmful. People get sucked into, and that encapsulates their entire life, and that'd be religion, because these AA meetings tend to happen at churches, and there is a religious aspect to it a lot of times. But nonetheless, this prayer kind of encapsulates a better way to find that balance. And for those of you not familiar with it, it goes and don't quote me on the exact words. It's God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Now, again, I'm not a prayerful person, but if listening to those words, it gives you a good example of where to put your energy. We're probably not going to see the end of the National Rifle Association in my lifetime. Are we going to still sit here and talk about how they're a terrorist organization? Yes. But it's finding where to put your energy so that you don't become mentally exhausted, so that mental illness and mental health don't start to rule your entire life. Because as much as it's important to be angry and to speak out about things, it can't be at the expense of your own mental health or your friends and family. So find that balance while also not becoming numb to it. Because as difficult as it is, I mean, I was in high school when Columbine happened. I will never forget that day. I had and this wasn't as nearly as big of it, but there was a high school not far from mine that had a shooting issue. It wasn't involving larger rifles, like Columbine and stuff, but students were killed and students were hurt. And that happened at a high school not far from my high school. Actually, even closer to where I lived at the time when I went to high school, because my high school was quite far from, not quite far, but it was farther from my house than most people when they go to high school, because it's private school. That's what you do. And no buses either. That's the one good thing, is when your private school is quite far away, your parents are usually excited for you to get your license, because they're like, hey, I ain't trucking you down there 15 miles down to the school every morning at 6 in the morning and, whatever else. So I've seen it grow, and I've seen how that numbness is, and how the coverage changes, and how we constantly argue over it. And I don't know what that solution is. I mean, I do, but we're not able to push that solution. We have politicians keeping us from doing that. We have organizations keeping us from doing that. And money rules all things. But it doesn't mean to give up. It's just finding that balance. And we all need to do that. And this goes for lots of things. I am thankful every day that I live in the state of California, where we have gun laws, where women have more rights than many other states in this country, and where the LGBTQ community is much more welcome than many states in this country. But those are all things that can boil up. And we need to find that balance of fighting it, arguing with other people, but also keeping our own mental state where it should be and taking care of our own homes and our own friends and our own family. Control what you can and try to change what you may be able to change. But you're not going to be able to change the world. No individual is ever going to be able to change the world. All you can do is you can just do as much as you can within your capabilities and your mental capacity. So keep that in mind, Wall fans. All right. On that note, let's talk about some positive news. It's funny. Today I was like, I need a positive news story, and I'm kind of like, another guns and NRA and National Rifle had their annual meeting. Association had their annual meeting recently, and railing against that. And then I went, oh, duh. And this one is mainly going to pertain to our listeners in the UK. I am actually, shout out to Paul Smith of Zombie Teeth Clothing. I'm actually wearing one of the newest. I was going to say the newest, but there's a couple new designs that came out with the new Barstool Preachers album that we reviewed on our last episode 102. But I didn't, this shirt wasn't in yet. My vinyl wasn't even in yet. I was listening to just my digital version. But shout out to Paul Smith of Zombie Teeth Clothing for the Lighthouse Keeper t-shirt that I'm currently wearing. Fantastic design. But not only because I just got it. Oh my gosh, excuse me, Wolfan. Before I get into this positive news and talk more about this t-shirt, I was at a kid's birthday party this afternoon. Our friends. I've actually known this couple and their kids before my kid was born. And their younger daughter is just a little bit older than my kid, but these friends of ours, the father, the husband, really likes to smoke meats, and so he did some pork butt. And so apologies if that burp was slightly audible, but it tasted like some smoked pork butt there, and I was like, ooh, not that the burp was tasty, but it reminded me of the tastiness of the pork. Now that we've gotten tangented, like I said, I'm wearing my Lighthouse Keeper design shirt, courtesy of Paul Smith and Zombie Teeth Clothing and the Barstool Preachers, of course. You too can own this shirt. Head on over to Pure Noise Records, and you can order this shirt. It was on pre-order, because I ordered it back in January, but now I believe it'll just get shipped out right away, because they were doing the whole pre-order stuff back there in January. But the reason I bring that up, and why I say this is, for now, pertaining primarily to our listeners in the UK, is the Barstool Preachers have put together a thing called BSP Presents Tiny Paws Books for Kids. And there's some statistics out there that's something, and nobody quote me on these numbers. To get more information, definitely go check out the Barstool Preachers social posts. Gibbs put up a video where he was talking about it, but there's millions of kids out there, and I believe they were just talking about the UK, but this is probably accurate worldwide, that don't have access to books, let alone computers and stuff, but just children's books. And so they've put together this initiative to bring books to kids in need. And so what they're doing is on their current UK tour leg, which is just kicked off, I believe, or start. I don't have these dates in front. And to be honest with you, I don't pay close enough attention to the UK dates, because I'm like, well, I can't go to those dates anyway. So I'm just waiting for May, when the boys come back and I see them for the first time in almost 3 years or 4. Jeez, 3 and sauce, ridiculous. But what they're doing is encouraging people to bring used kids' books, and I'm sure you could bring new ones too, to their shows on this UK, like the UK shows. And for those of you that have kids, you end up, you go through, my daughter's room is just full of books. And we cycle them out. And what happens is we have friends with older kids, and they pass down the books, and then we pass down the books, So you end up with a lot of books. If you're fortunate, like my family is, to be able to have all those books. So chances are, if you have kids, or you know someone that has kids, in the UK right now, you can probably get some books from them, bring them to the show, and the Barstool Preachers will make sure they get into the hands of kids in need that do not have access to books in their home, in their schools, whatever it might be. I'd love to see an initiative. I'm sure there are similar initiatives. Dolly Parton does something very similar, but I'd love to see this specific Tiny Paws initiative come to the U.S. But for now, if you're in the UK, You can bring books to the shows, and then, like I said, please check out the social post because there's a couple of venues. Even if you are in the UK and you cannot make it to that specific show date, there's a couple of venues that you can just go at other times and drop off the books. So good on you, boys. I love seeing things like this. They're some of the best bunch of guys that you're ever going to meet, especially in the music industry. And this is just a positive way that positive thing that they are enacting to help those in need. And you love to see it. Love to see it. So please, if you're in the UK, check that out. And we'll keep everyone updated if it's something that they can do when they come for the North American leg of their tour, which is, I believe it starts in May. I can't remember. I just focus on when they're coming to Southern California, or this time around when they're coming to Vegas, because they're going to be in Southern California while I'm in Vegas, but then they leave Southern California to come to Vegas while I'm still in Vegas. So, and on top of that, I've been going back and forth with TJ. We are going to have TJ McFall, the lead singer of Barstool Preachers. I've been trying to get, I'm not great with the Zoom interview stuff, so I've been trying to get him, and maybe if he has time while he's in the U.S., we might be able to do it, but we will have him guesting on the podcast. Really, outside of the Centibration, will be our first full guest, but we are planning to do that. It's just lining up schedules and figuring out Zoom links and time differences and everything else. So look forward to that at some point in the near future. All right, let's talk a little parenting. Oh, boy. Told you. See, my kid. Luckily, the birthday party was not a. Sometimes you go to these birthday parties. I was at a couple years ago. Was at a kid, and they had a candy bar, and it was just like all different kinds of candy on this table. And you see these things. It's like, oh, here's a little bag for you. No, they were using red Solo cups, like the big Solo cups they use at parties, and kids are just piling M&Ms and Skittles. It's like, good Lord. Luckily this party didn't have too much of that, so the kid was somewhat contained as far as sugar goes. But my kid actually started volleyball this week. I know I've talked about many of the extracurricular activities and the interesting side of basketball and tennis, and so now we are trying out volleyball. We're very fortunate here in Los Angeles because our rec centers, they have very affordable programs. And if you're depending where you live, definitely check out your local rec center. I'm sure it's not just Los Angeles. We're just very fortunate here. So she has started now volleyball, which they don't have enough kids for a league, but they are teaching these kids to play volleyball. Younger kids and who are just getting into sports, and I think it's fantastic to if a kid doesn't like sports, that's fine, but at a certain age they should just try it out. If they try it out and they don't like it, you shouldn't force your kids to do it. So now we're trying out volleyball, and my kid loves it. My wife's excited. She was a high school volleyball player, so she was like, they're having volleyball? Signing her up. I don't even think she asked my daughter. Luckily, my daughter said, yeah, sure, I'll try out volleyball. And then she was very nervous to go and do it. But it's very, and I was nervous as well because, she's, and I don't stress about it, first of all, because if kids aren't into sports, it's fine. They need some activities. But I was also a late bloomer. When I was my daughter's age, I was, I was on inline skates and a skateboard, but I was not, it's not very athletic when it came to traditional sports. And so, I was like, okay, well, she's not a huge fan of like a basketball, flying, hitting the rim and coming toward her. I don't know how she's going to do with a volleyball. You ever seen? And of course, in my head, I'm thinking like, Jesus Christ, I've watched Olympic volleyball. I swear to God, that volleyball's moving 150 miles an hour. But they're very good. And I'm so grateful for, and I was talking to another parent actually today at the birthday party, and he was saying, it's great to see. They've had, and I don't know if it's luck or if it's just everybody's like that, but just the patience from the people that are working at these rec centers and teaching kids how to play sports is just amazing to me. I don't have that patience. I can tell you that right now. But they did a great job, and I'm really grateful for those opportunities and the people that make it doable for her, because I was so nervous. I'm sitting there going, oh, man, oh, man, oh, man. But, different skill levels with kids, and you've got to kind of nurture that and be patient with them, and they do such a great job at that. And now she's very excited about volleyball. She's got a long way to go before she can play a game. And this was funny. They had the volleyball net up, and it's like, I'm looking at it, and I don't know the exact height of a volleyball net, but I'm like, I think that's the height that, like, adults would use. And, they weren't hitting the ball over the net. And I'm going, how are they going to, okay, they didn't quite use the net yet, but it's just the basics. So that was a lot of fun. And like I said, I encourage, if you're a parent check out your local rec center because there's so many opportunities for inexpensive opportunities. And I think there's more nowadays than when I was a kid, or maybe it was just partly where I lived, and maybe your rec center doesn't have it. But here in LA, it's a minimal cost for your kid to have a weekly activity, and we just stack my kid up. Dance class is not inexpensive. That's the expensive one. But like tennis and basketball and volleyball, it's like, here, it's, can I give you a little more money so that the rec center can, survive? But no, it's just very inexpensive. All right, last night, my wife was actually gone for the evening for a work function, so my daughter and I, and to get tangented for a sec, my daughter wanted McDonald's, and I have McDonald's very close by. And I'll tell you, I've really gotten into using the McDonald's app. If you're not using the McDonald's app, you got to use it, unless you never go to McDonald's. And I'm not a big McDonald's, but you go there and get a McDouble and some fries, like especially if you're got a little low blood sugar, maybe had a couple too many glasses of wine the night before. It's fantastic. But if you're not using that McDonald's app, use that app because you get these points. And then I go in there and I'm like, oh, deals. What's this? 20%? Oh, yeah. Let's do that and give me 20% off of this order. But let me warn you. McDoubles and chicken nuggets, all great. Do not get the McChicken stuff. I got the spicy McChicken. And as you know, if you've been listening to this podcast for at least the last year or so, Popeyes is one of the greatest chicken sandwiches I've ever had, especially when it comes to fast food. This was not only was it not as good as Popeyes, it was just bad. So do not get a McChicken or a spicy McChicken from McDonald's. Trust me, you've been warned. Get the nuggets or something else. But so we do that and go get McDonald's, and I'm like, hey, let's have a movie night. So I asked my kid, what movie you want to watch? And she goes, Turning Red. And this is I don't know if it's the newest. It is a newer Disney Pixar movie. My daughter had seen it, and I said, "Oh, you've seen it, right?" Because a lot of times I either need to see the movie because there's silly things, and I've talked to other parents about this. Just depending on the kid, and if you know your kid, you kind of know. If something's going to scare them or keep them up, whatever it might be. And so usually I like to watch something, or there's websites you can go to, or even just on IMDb, and it'll tell you, like, not full on, it'll have parent reviews, but it'll tell you, like, oh, no, there's, mild, but you're okay for the most part. But I said, you've seen it? And she said, yeah. So I said, okay, we'll just put the thing on, because I hadn't seen it. And really fun movie. And I will say, for a Pixar movie, surprisingly not super depressing, which is what happens with a lot of Pixar movies. Because like, there's that meme that goes around, and it's like, toys have feelings, dinosaurs have feelings, some things have, whatever has feelings, and now feelings have feelings, because there was that, whatever that one Pixar film is with the, the emotions in it, and you get the rage and whatever that one's called. But this one surprisingly didn't have that aspect of it. Now, of course, it's going to have some drama and, and so it had a little bit of that. But unfortunately, and I won't do it to you, but unfortunately, I'm watching my kid start spoiling the damn thing. Well, and she's so, and it was the cutest thing ever, because we watch movies, and I've seen this movie 100 times, and we'll watch the movie together. But I might get up to start cooking dinner or something, and come back to it. And last night she was like, "No, Daddy, no, are you watching? Are you watching?" "Yes, I'm watching." Get up to grab something to drink. "Daddy, come on." But then she hit the point where she's like, "You got to see this part," and then at one point she spoiled a very, very big part of it, and I'm just kind of looked over at her. I'm like, hey, stop spoiling the movie for me. But highly recommend it if you haven't seen that one. It's a good one to watch with your kids. I don't know how young. It seemed pretty harmless for the most part. There might, if your kid's super young, maybe they'll get freaked out by a little transformation action there. And it's obviously a metaphor for getting your first period. But it also has a lot of Teen Wolf vibes to it, because I'm like, this is like an animated Teen Wolf. And that's not spoiling. That's literally not spoiling anything, because if you've heard of the movie, the little girl turns into a red panda. So it's kind of like Teen Wolf. Teenager, and not little girl, 13-year-old girl. Teenage Michael J. Fox turns into a werewolf, type stuff. So check that one out. I enjoyed it. And then this has been a challenge, and I know a lot of parents can commiserate with me over this, and that's navigating meal times, mainly dinner time. That's been the tough one, because at lunch it's like, sandwich and certain stuff, and breakfast, cereal, pancakes, that kind of stuff, but it's dinner time. And my kid has hit the age where even stuff she likes, she just randomly like, I don't like that anymore. Like, for example, my kid loved pickles for a long time. She would just eat the pickled sliced pickles like out of the jar. He pulls them out, put them on her plate. She's eating them. Now all of a sudden, those are gross. Like, since when is this gross? And it's random things. And now she's at the point where she'll be like, what are we having for dinner tonight? Oh, blah, blah. That's gross. And I'll be like, you don't even know what it is. Or it'll be something where I'm like, you used to love this. You loved this 2 weeks ago. Why is it gross now? So I don't know what the solution is. There is no solution, but there's a compromise. And what we've been doing with my daughter, we call it a no thank you bite. You got to try everything. Because there's definitely a balance. Because, some kids grow up, finish everything on your plate. And I've said it, I've never said it before, but I'm like, there's kids in other countries. And my wife will say, there's kids in this country that would love to have what's on your plate right now. It's stuff like that. But the no thank you bite is to at least try it, I think, is all you can ask of kids of a certain age. And then, like I said, I avoided it today with the birthday party. And I'm hoping we're kind of done with the gauntlet now for a little while as far as sugar and candy. But Easter kind of bookends that gauntlet that starts with Halloween and October and everything else. My child was just on a sugar high from basically 9 a.m. until bedtime. Until past bedtime, really. It's like, well, the Easter Bunny brings a basket, and then there's an Easter egg hunt, and then we go to like a little brunch at our friend's house that lives nearby, and they're getting more candy there, and then cupcakes, and my mother makes a lamb-shaped cake, and she's eating that, and it's just like, oh, Lord. I swear she was running on the ceiling at one point, but the sugar rush is real, the sugar high is unavoidable, and all you can do is kind of batten down the hatches and be like, well, there we go, and then hope that they somehow crash from it and finally go to sleep. All right, let's talk some common sense. We're getting short on time. I thought we were going to be shorter episode today. That always happens, though. Common sense. Conservatives and Bud Light. Oh, yes. Conservatives love to get so angry at inanimate things. And this is just the latest thing that conservatives are upset at because Bud Light decided to partner with a transgender spokesperson. And apologies, Dylan Mulvaney, I believe. But that's not the point of what I'm trying to talk about here. What I'm trying to talk about is the fact that they get offended by just about anything. And it all really started to catch fire when Kid Rock, yes, that Kid Rock, poster child for meth addiction, decided to shoot up a bunch of cases of Bud Light with his very large, whatever kind of gun it was that he has no reason to be owning unless he's trying to hunt an entire pack of bears. I don't even think bears run in packs, but I digress. And so now we're just seeing tons of videos of people complaining. There was even a viral video of somebody, those big pavers, and they rolling over all the Bud Light, and Anheuser-Busch is just sitting there going, all right, well, you paid for the Bud Light already. It's fine if you want to destroy it. We still made our money, just like when everyone was burning their Nikes and all this other stuff. Most importantly, it's a beer. Calm down. And if you're really worried about boycotting Bud Light, know that they are owned by Anheuser-Busch, and there's really only like 3 beer companies outside of small craft breweries in the entire world. So just prepare yourselves for that, because Coors Light's got a LGBTQ commitment, support commitment that they put out as well. So you're conservatives, you're not going to be able to avoid it completely. And most importantly, as we always say here at Go Tell It to the Wall, it doesn't fucking affect you. Why are conservatives so concerned with how people act and dress when it doesn't harm anybody? It's not harming anybody. Here's the thing. You don't want your kids to see it. Don't let your kids watch beer commercials. And I don't even think it's beer commercials. It's not something you're going to see on TV. It's social media stuff. Give me a fucking break with this. But then, of course, we have certain guys, and there's a guy, I don't even know where the hell he's from, and I don't care, and I don't know his name, but I got a little background on him. He's essentially a grifter. He's done many of these things from a conservative standpoint, and I believe handled a local campaign for the Orange Menace in one of the states or jurisdictions or whatever back in 2016. And it is the Conservative Dad's Ultra-Right Beer. I'm sad to say I had to see this ad because it popped up at some point, and I said, what is this crazy son of a bitch doing? He's hitting Bud Light off a tee, and I'm like, cool, you're still playing t-ball and you're an adult dad. Nonetheless, if you want to pick up this Conservative Dad's Ultra-Right Beer, and here's the thing, part of me was like, I'm going to go buy some Bud Light, and then I was like, but I don't like Bud Light. does not taste good to me. So I was like, should I just buy a pack of Bud Light for somebody I know that likes Bud Light? I don't know. But if you want to get some beer that probably tastes much worse than even Bud Light or Coors Light, you can pick this up on their website, whatever the hell their website is. Here's the thing. It's $20 for a 6-pack of this shitty beer, which is 4%. For those of you not familiar, 4%, that's about right for like a Budweiser and stuff like that. And you could say, well, Sean, I've seen 6-packs of craft beer for 20. Yes, that beer is usually like 9%, and there's not a lot of it made, and it doesn't taste like piss. So there is a big difference there. And even then, you're not usually paying $20 for a 6-pack of that. Go to all the craft breweries around here, you're not paying $20. And that's plus tax and shipping. You're going to have this shipped to you. And even better, the beer's not even ready yet. It's a pre-order. So if you want to pre-order some terrible beer, head on over to Conservative Dad's Ultra Right Beer. I have a feeling nobody listening to this podcast has any interest in that kind of beer, because we drink good beer here at Go Tell It to the Wall. All right, we had the annual NRA meeting over this past week. Spreading lies and propaganda, but I'm so tired of railing against NRA because nothing, and I'm still going to speak up against it. It's a terrorist organization. They don't stand for anything we do here at Go Tell It to the Wall. But there is a viral video where somebody's talking and they say, it's not just middle-aged white men that love guns. It's blah, 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 and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And they pan to the audience, and the entire audience is middle-aged white men. It's like, oh, gotcha. So that didn't make any sense. I'm so sick of them controlling politicians, but I don't know what we're going to do to change that. And speaking of ridiculous gun things, we had a situation in Nashville at a Walgreens. There was an employee who shot a pregnant woman because he thought she was shoplifting some cosmetics, some makeup. Followed her to the parking lot and shot her because as he approached, I guess he felt threatened by a pregnant woman, so he felt the need to shoot her. Now, not worth it, first of all. Why are we doing this? Why? You're like, you hear these, it's a good guy with a gun, and you got to protect yourself. You're not protecting yourself in this situation. You are clearly should not have a gun in the first place. But for those of you that have never worked retail, when it comes to retail, especially if you work for a big chain, they literally tell you, if someone shoplifts, you let them go, and you write a little report about it, and they're on their way. Maybe police are contacted if it's a bunch of stuff stolen, but you are not chasing them. Every single retail employer on the face of the earth, well, I will say, I don't know about the face of the earth. Maybe in China, they're like, follow them. But here in the U.S., they say, don't follow them. In fact, if you're a delinquent college kid, you might have known that grocery stores had a don't chase policy, and if you didn't have a fake ID to buy liquor, and sometimes, you had a friend that went in, and not myself personally by any means, but I've heard of it happening. And this is a no chase policy. All right, we had a New York Post article. This one really pissed me off. New York Post is such a shit show, just the stuff that comes out of there, but it was regarding legal weed and legal marijuana, legal cannabis in the state of New York. Claimed everyone working retail in New York is now too stoned to do their jobs. And this guy was bringing up examples. I don't even know who wrote this fucking article, but it's so tone deaf. And everywhere I go, the barista is too stoned to take my order, and somebody lost my credit card and all this stuff. And it's like, yo, you do realize that marijuana has been around a very, very, very long time. Chances are, if the person working retail is stoned, they were stoned before it was legal anyway. And here's the other thing. Employers would notice these things. We're clearly trying to make a mountain out of nothing. And then on top of that, like I've said from the very, 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 very beginning, it's the same as alcohol. Do you complain that people are drunk all the time because alcohol is legal? No. So I doubt there's any accuracy to that at all. All right, one more thing here in Common Sense. AI music is now popping up. That's right, AI music. We knew this would come. This is the one time where, like, the recording record whatever association is actually going to work to our advantage instead of just monopolizing everything. Is they're probably going to kill it. They're like, whoa, now you're getting in our pockets. They weren't worried about the artists and the artwork. Now they're getting in their pockets. So we'll see what happens with that. But you knew it would come. Still not a fan of the AI. And here's the thing that's also been pointed out recently is we're utilizing AI to make art and photos and music. And it's like, AI should be used in a way that frees up people's time to actually do that. but instead we are using AI to make the things that people take joy from creating. That's common sense. All right, let's talk some entertainment news, then we're going to wrap up episode 103. Blink-182, they had their official reunion finally this past Friday at Coachella, of all places. First time Mark, Tom, and Travis were on stage together since 2014. They still suck live, which is ridiculous. They have sucked live since the first time I saw them back in like 1994. They're a great studio band. I enjoy their music, and the thing that makes them fun to see live is their banter, and it was so funny because I'm watching the stream actually as I'm waiting in line to go into another show on Friday night. And I'm like, man, they sound terrible. But then the banter started, and I went, oh, yeah, that's why they were a lot of fun to see back in the day. I don't know that it's worth all of the ridiculous ticket costs, but nonetheless, the banter is well worth it. And they're, I guess, reunited, and it feels so good, and kicking off their tour. And Coachella just seemed like a strange place to me for them to do that, but that's where they did it. Obviously, very popular, large crowds out there. Coachella just makes me feel old because I don't recognize the majority of the bands. Now, there's always a couple bands that I do recognize, and to be fair, Blondie also played. And it's like, well, yes, I know who Blondie is. They were making music before I was born. So yes, there's those few. But then I look at like the headliners. I'm like, who? Little what? Bad who? Okay, I don't know any of these bands, and it just makes me feel old. I'm going to save that, actually, because we're running out of time anyway. All right, moving along. Rancid. I got a postcard from Rancid the other day. Literally. And it's funny, we have this, I don't know if every state has this, but you have this like informed mail, and it'll email, I don't know, my wife does it. It'll email you a picture of kind of what's getting delivered that day. And my wife goes, hey, you got a postcard from Rancid in the mail. And I was like, what? It's like, Rancid sending me a postcard. Then I went, oh, no, it's probably a friend picked up a Rancid postcard and sent it to me from somewhere. No, it was, in fact, from Rancid. Now, this was not a handwritten postcard, but it was like a obviously mass-produced postcard that they sent out to let me know that they have a new single coming out on the 18th, 2 days from now. And obviously, they had many posts going on kind of everywhere. But I loved that they're using mail service to inform me. And then I was like, and I asked a couple people, did you get a postcard? People were like, no. My wife goes, maybe it's because you're old. And I was like, but my other old friends didn't get one either. And so not that I'm special. I'm sure I'm just on some list that got it. But nonetheless, new single coming out April 18th, and there should be a new album coming down the pipes. We've known that there was an album coming down the pipes. It's so funny. I have to remember what gets posted on socials and what I hear talking to actual artists, because I talk to some musicians, and they're like, hey, nobody knows, but album's actually done, and then I'm like, wait, and I'm like, oh, it's cool, but then I have to remember, Rancid's one of the ones, it's kind of been posted. They've been working on a new album, should be just about done and probably coming out soon. Speaking of Rancid, Bad Optics, we talked about that. This made my episode inaccurate like a day later, but Bad Optics decided to change their name. They are now called Doom Regulator. I'm not sure why, but they are now called Doom Regulator instead of Bad Optics. That is the Tim Armstrong, Jesse Michaels, and two other guys in their band, the pseudo Op Ivy reunion band, I guess you could say. Fire Festival 2, that's right, there is talk of this. The guy that put on the original Fire Festival is now out of jail and has come out saying that he is going to put on Fire Festival 2. Now, you probably don't need my advice, but just in case you do not have anything to do with what this guy is putting together when it comes to anything called Fire Festival, or probably anything he does. It's just good advice. So we'll see the train wreck that is Fire Festival 2 if that ever gets off the ground. We got some news recently this week, I think. We're doing an American remake of Squid Games. That's right, the crazy popular Netflix show that everybody was watching, not myself included, because I have no interest in that kind of thing. But of course, and like I said, the original was not for me. We have to remake everything, and it's probably going to be terrible, but everyone's going to eat it up because that's what people do, and they ate up the original Squid Games. All right, I want to kind of get through this quickly. I wanted to have more time for it, but I teased it last episode. Bouncing Souls, they released their new album. I had the pleasure of going to their album release show, which was a very, I don't want to call it intimate. It was a very small venue for Bouncing Souls. It was the Knitting Factory, the new Knitting Factory there in North Hollywood here in Southern California. It was a fantastic show. They actually played for like an hour and 20 minutes. It was pretty wild. They left the stage, and it wasn't like we're done. They just kind of left the stage. The lead singer came out, did a quick acoustic song, and then they all came back out. It was just epic. And I don't think I've ever seen them in a venue that small, especially since they reached kind of the level that they've been. Because back in the early '90s, they gained such momentum and became a very popular band. So had the play. It was fantastic seeing them in that small venue. They did a great job. There was one obnoxious dude that I had to keep away from some other of my friends who was a little too drunk and was running around going, "Bouncing souls, bro, bouncing souls." And it's like, all right, calm down. We're all excited, but we're all like in our 30s and 40s, so calm down. Had such a blast. New album is pretty great. We'll probably do a full album review. I haven't had a chance to really deep dive into that album. Too many albums are coming out around the same time. Then I had the pleasure of seeing him the following day at Punk in the Park Ventura. Punk in the Park is just putting on such great events, the beer tasting and everything else. Some great bands were out there. The Bronx killed it. Bouncing Souls killed it. Strung Out killed it. I'm not a big Suicidal Tendencies fan, but they killed it. Mike Muir of Suicidal Tendencies was out taking pictures with everybody, just hooting and hollering, having fun. Manic Hispanic killed it. Elvis Cortez was running around with Smelvis Records, and got to talk to him for a while. Had an absolute blast. What I will say, and this has just been building over the years for me, I am a fan of Pennywise, but holy shit, did they suck at Punk in the Park Ventura. And they even admitted, it was so funny because at one point they admitted to it, and they're like, if you didn't know, we're the most disorganized band and ever, or something like that. And I was like, nope, second most behind Guttermouth. I even turned to my buddy Kevin, and he just laughed. He's like, yep, because there is worse. But Pennywise did not put on a good show. I was slightly shocked. I think they're nearing the end. And then Friday, like I said, I was watching the Blink-182 performance on YouTube, on the Coachella YouTube, which if you're interested in seeing some bands that I don't even know who the hell they are, you can go to the Coachella YouTube channel. They've got all the stages up there. Actually went to see They Might Be Giants at the Wiltern on Friday. My wife bought tickets for this show, I believe pre-COVID. If not, it got rescheduled a couple times. It was originally in like it might have been post-COVID, but originally 2021, then it got moved to 2022, and then it got moved to, obviously, 2023. I was kind of going in like, I know They Might Be Giants. I know the couple theme songs they did. But they put on a fantastic show. 2 sets. They did 2 sets. They played one of their albums in full, obviously mixed in others of their popular songs and some of their newer songs. I guess they had an album come out in 2020. But I did recognize a couple of songs. They have that Birdhouse in Your Soul song, that Worm song, and then the Constantinople song. Recognized all these. But something I never realized about them was I knew they had a keyboardist, because I feel like I knew that for some reason. But he, at one point, a few points actually, pulls out an accordion. And my Polish-American heart just about burst out my chest because I said, oh, my God, I'm a sucker for the accordion. They had so much fun, and they have such a, not rabid fan base, it's such an excited fan base. And that was one thing I turned to my wife and said, did they just not tour a lot? And she's like, no. And it's like, okay, because people were just going absolutely nuts. And my wife was having a blast. I was having a blast, too. It's just I don't know as much of their music. But if you get a chance, even if you're not into their music, I'd recommend seeing They Might Be Giants. They just put on a really fun, upbeat show. Their chemistry was great. Their music was good. Their music was great and good. Some of the songs I'm like, okay. And then some songs I'm like, oh, yeah, I do recognize this song from like 1990. You know, they've been around for a very long time. So I had the pleasure of doing that and had an absolute blast. And it's always nice when my wife and I can go out together without our daughter. We actually got a babysitter. That doesn't happen all the time. So it was nice to actually do that. All right. I think we're about done. We've gone over our usual hour time. That happens occasionally, as you know. So, what are we going to do now? No, we're just going to wrap it up. That's what we're going to do. Before we leave, don't forget you can follow us on certain social platforms. One of those would be facebook.com/GoTellItToTheWall. Again, facebook.com/GoTellItToTheWall. Also, YouTube. Head on over to youtube.com/GoTellItToTheWall and subscribe to our channel. Check out all of our great videos that get posted up there. And my own personal Instagram account, which is at SoCalSean, SoCalSean. And, of course, SeanO'RourkeLive.com, which will have links to those social platforms I just mentioned, as well as content you won't find anywhere else. And, of course, a link to our Patreon campaign if you want to help us out financially, or if you don't want to use Patreon but still want to help us out, you can pick up some Common Sense merch through our merch website linked directly from SeanO'RourkeLive.com. All right, we should be back next week. Same wall place, same wall time. This has been episode 103 of Common Sense Sundays with Go Tell It to the Wall, hosted by me, your absolute favorite podcast host, the one and only Sean O'Rourke. And remember, wall fans, common sensors, until next time, no matter what you do, no matter who you're with, no matter where you go, and especially no matter why you are doing it, always, always use common sense.